Our story begins with the main character named Yi Qin being reborn. Once upon a time, he was the god of war and the one who created the warring nation in the god nether realm. Yi Qin was in the water. And he, already in his new guise, remembered his name and what had happened to him. He also remembered how he was set up and because of what he died. Realizing all this, our hero woke up in a few seconds and abruptly stood up in his bed. Holding his head, Yi Qin thought for a moment and after a few seconds, he realized that he had been reborn. Jumping out of bed, the guy began to laugh and rejoice. He never thought that the gods would give him a second chance so that he could be reborn after 100 years. Yi Qin examined his body and realized that it was too weak for his strength. At that moment, he was even disgusted by it. In his new body, all the meridians were destroyed and because of this, the guy could not absorb Kai into him. Suddenly, his heart made a strange sound and then a yellow glow appeared around the protagonist. As it turned out, along with his mind, his demon heart was also transferred. It was the heart of 10,000 demons that was the reason why he became a powerful god of war. At the same moment, the guy using a special technique began to restore his destroyed meridians. Suddenly, during the process, Yiru came into the room. It was a little girl that Yi Qin had taken under his care 10 years ago. Entering the room, Yiru sat on the bed, covering part of her face with her hair, and said that she had taken medicine to Yi Qin. Noticing something was wrong, the main character asked his sister what was wrong with her face. Closing the wound even more, the girl said that everything was fine with her and he should not worry about her. And then, Yi Qin could not stand it, he removed his sister's hand on his own and then saw a large wound. The guy immediately asked what happened and the girl, without thinking twice, said that she went to the pharmacy for medicine, but the manager did not give it to her. These words angered the main character very much, he did not understand how a man could hit a little girl in the face. Closing her wound, Yiru said that everything was fine with her and her brother should not go to the manager and deal with him. And wiping away a tear, the girl said with a smile that none of her relatives wanted something to happen to him. Right after that, the door of the room was kicked in by a large man. It was the pharmacy manager who ordered Yiru to come and give him the medicine. Entering the room and considering everything that was happening, Li Kai concluded that Yiru had stolen the potion because Yi Qin was already awake and could walk. Yiru said that she did not steal anything and was not guilty. Li Kai did not listen to the girl, he claimed that she stole the potion because her brother had already woken up. Yiru, out of desperation, turned to her brother and again said that she was not guilty. Yi Qin believed her, he understood that she could not steal anything. At the same moment, Li Kai ordered his servants to grab the guys. And after a few seconds, the armed servants began to attack them. Seeing the danger, the main character activated his powers and stood up. Seeing the guy's stance, the servants were surprised at first and then without thinking twice began to attack. One of them used a whip against Yi Qin. He swung and tried to hit the guy. Yi Qin put up a barrier and the man's whip got stuck in it. Seeing that the servant is pulling the whip with all his might, the protagonist decides to remove the barrier and because of this, she hit the servant in the face by inertia. Seeing this, Li Kai became furious, he said that our hero was playing with death. After these words, he ordered to deal with the main character first and then with Yiru. The servants did not have time to take a step as the main character began to attack them. He used the shadow step of the wind to slip behind one of the servants unnoticed. Once in the back, Yi Qin destroyed the servant with a single blow. Li Kai saw Yi Qin turn his back on him and without wasting a moment, he jumped right at him, saying that he would now destroy him. Having waited for the right moment, the main character without any effort, with one blow, laid the fat man on the floor. To finish off the manager, Yi Qin used a blade fist. Li Kai, realizing what would happen next, finally said that he was one of someone's people, but this did not help him. A few seconds later, the man's blood flooded the walls of the room. The rest of the servants saw what happened and were very frightened, they could not move from the shock. At that moment, Uncle Pang entered the room. He, seeing the destroyed Li Kai, immediately asked what happened here. The main character, without any hints and lies, immediately said that this was his work. He also said that the manager ignored the rules of the house and that he tried to destroy it. Uncle Pang was surprised, he was not alarmed by what was happening, he was only glad that the guy regained his strength and restored his meridians. Yiru tried to intervene in their conversation, all this time she told how and in what way the main character destroyed the man. After Uncle Pang found out that along with the guy's powers, his fighting talent returned, he laughed and was delighted. While laughing, he told the guy not to worry about Li Kai's death because he would take care of him. After saying that, the man ordered the guards to take away Lee Kai's body. And then, he looked at the servants of the destroyed manager, and they were horrified. Yi Qin also looked at them and told Uncle Peng that they had helped Lee Kai to do all this, and after that, the guy said to be taken away and punished with hundreds of blows and also expelled from home. Hearing this, one of the servants knelt down in front of the boy and with tears in his eyes, said that they had made a mistake and that it was Lee Kai who made them do it. Without continuing to listen to this, the main character hit the servant in the face and told him to add 100 more blows. After that, all the culprits were taken away. Uncle Peng approached Yi Qin and told the boy to go to his father to tell him everything. And without hesitation, Yi Qin agreed. When everyone left, the main character was left alone with his thoughts. He sat down in a pose, and the yellow glow reappeared around him. This time, the guy thought about what kind of fighting spirit he would have in this life. To awaken him, the guy will first have to reach the 9th level of body hardening. In his previous life, he received the heart of 10 demons. His battle soul was a green dragon. In addition to the dragon, there were also some animals, as well as symbols. In deep concentration, our hero seemed to be struck by lightning. He realized that if some sources in him awakened, then he would again become the god of war. 3 days later, the main character was sitting in his room and meditating. Suddenly, he had a headache and at the same moment, his body and hands shone with a yellow glow, and he reached the 9th level of body tempering. Suddenly, Ro came into his room. She told her brother that today was the day of the awakening of the forces, but it came very early. All in tears, the girl clung to the guy and said that if the family wants to drive him away, then she will go with him. Hugging his sister, Qin asked her if everything was fine. After a little thought, the main character invited his sister to go with him to the arena. Reassured, Ro agreed. And after a few minutes, the guys went there. Suddenly a wolf jumped out of nowhere. As soon as the animal saw the guys, he immediately attacked them. Ru did not even have time to do anything when Qin immediately became in a protective stance and began to protect his sister. He jumped off the ground and in a jump hit the wolf on the head. From the force of the impact, the predator fell to the ground and lost consciousness. After a few seconds, the wolf came to his senses. He was furious. Using wind magic, the predator immediately pounced on the guy. The wolf in a jump sent a stream to Qin. The hero tried to stop the attack of the wolf by stretching his hand in front of him. Rose stood behind him and asked her brother to be careful. Qin jumped over the wolf and flying high up and using his strength, he destroyed the poisonous wolf with one blow to the head. After the victory, passers-by approached the guy, one of them insulted the guy and asked how he dared to destroy the predator. Qin, inspecting his bloody fist, did not even pay attention to the men. The man repeated his words again. He asked how Qin, after the destruction of the wolf, could remain in the Yi family. The men were very frightened when Qin looked at them, but to their happiness, our hero told Ru to keep going. After a while, the guys came to the Yi family arena. In the middle of the arena, there was a big statue. This statue, a tablet of fighting spirit, is capable of unlocking the potential of the fighting spirit hidden in the body of a martial artist. Near the tablet sat the second elder named Shayeg. As it turned out, at that moment, the awakening of the spirit began, and the first person to awaken his spirit was a guy named Dong. He had to hit the tablet with his aura with all his might so that later, it would show his fighting spirit. Dong did just that. He hit the tablet and a red spike of a storm wolf appeared near him. By their standards, this is a very weak spirit. After the failure, Dong, his father, began to calm him down. He, like the guy, with tears in his eyes, told his son not to be upset. Dong's father encouraged him by saying that Qin had never awakened his fighting spirit. In sadness and panic, Dong and his father left the arena. 2 guys were watching them from the side. One of them said that Dong no longer had a chance to get ahead. The other guy started hinting at Qin, and while he was talking, his friend asked him to take a quick look at the second elder. The elder, however, happily announced that Xiao Yan would go second. Xiao Yan was a small but capable boy. When he walked past the crowd, everyone around him admired him and his strength. Everyone respected him. Under conversations and discussions, little Tian went to the tablets. And turning his head, he saw Qin and Ru. From this, he began to laugh and poking at them with his fingers. He asked what they were doing here. The rest of the masters were watching, and they also thought that Qin was too arrogant to show up here. Without doubting himself, the protagonist specifically called Yan his cousin and told him not to worry about him. This did not hurt Yan in any way, but the others began to mock the guy. From all this, Tian only had a burning desire to teach Qin a lesson. He said that today, he would show who a real genius is. And right after these words, he struck the tablet. The statue rang, and a second later, a dragon tiger beast emerged from it. Everyone around was shocked by the strength of the boy. Some admired Tian's fighting spirit, while others said that Qin would remain a non-entity once his fighting spirit awakened. The second elder was very happy about this and also praised Tian. After displaying a fighting spirit, the boy looked at our hero strangely and asked if he did not want to try. Qin didn't say anything, just looked at Tian. And then he laughed, and just as Qin wanted to say something, he was interrupted by a worried guy. He ran to tell that someone had destroyed Tian's wolf. From this news, the boy became very angry and immediately asked who destroyed his pet. Catching his breath, the guy said that our hero had eliminated his wolf. Tian approached the guy and taking him by the collar, he began to shout and ask how Qin could destroy him because he did not believe the words of the speaker. During this, the main character approached the guys. He himself confessed to what he had done. From this, Tian was even more angry. He asked him how he dared to destroy his wolf. The speaker turned around and pointed to the main character, said that this is the same cheap person who dealt with the wolf. From the word cheap, Qin became very angry with the guy. He looked at him with an intimidating look and once again asked about his words. Not afraid, the man began to point his finger at him and insult his mother, saying who she was. The patience of our hero snapped and he hit the guy with all his strength so that he almost died. Little Tian saw this and summoning his fighting spirit, he said that he would destroy Qin for everything he had done. Shaking the dust off himself, Qin said that his beast hurt people because today he almost ate his sister. He also said that the boy did not know how to teach his servant a lesson, so he did it instead of him. From this, the boy became so angry that at some point he became like a demon. The main character was not at all afraid of him, and having accepted the challenge, he stood up and said that he would destroy his fighting spirit in order to teach him how to behave. Without thinking, Tian rushed into battle. He waved his hand with the help of his spirit and tried to hit our hero. He deftly dodged the blow, and Tian did not like it. He insulted the guy, saying that all he could do was dodge and hide. People watching from the side also said nasty things about our hero. Tian decided to use a strong technique. A black mark appeared from his mouth. This was seen by the second elder. He tried to stop the boy because if he did not stop, he could easily damage his fighting spirit. Tian attacked the guy with his strongest attack. Qin did not dodge, he also used the technique. Stretching out his hands in front of him, the boy began to slowly destroy the boy's fighting spirit like a dragon's paws. Tian couldn't believe what was happening, and the second elder shouted from the sidelines for Qin to stop it, but our hero did not listen to him at all. After finishing the ritual, he clenched his hands and in doing so, he destroyed the boy's fighting spirit. Tian flew off to the side and lay unconscious. The second elder ran up to the boy to understand what had happened. And raising his head, the old man started yelling at Qin, saying that he ruined the future of the Yi family. At those words, Qin laughed. He said that Tian couldn't be the Yi family's genius since he couldn't defeat him. On the ground, the exhausted boy was crying because his fighting spirit was gone. He also asked why Qin beat him to such a state. Suddenly, the boy's father came to the scene. He was overjoyed because he had recently learned that his son had awakened a fighting spirit. Approaching his son, he asked what his fighting spirit was and with a smile on his face asked to demonstrate it. As soon as the father took a closer look, he immediately became furious. Like a monster, he began to ask who did this to his son. Absolutely everyone around, at the same moment, pointed a finger at the main character. The father, already activating his abilities, asked the guy if he did it. Qin also activated his powers, and without denying it, he told the man that his son was spoiled and so arrogant that in the end he turned out to be what he is now. These words made the man angry. He cast a spell and headed straight for Qin. Qin also wanted to rush into battle, but at one point Uncle Peng prevented him from doing so. He stood in front of our hero, thus covering him with himself. The enraged father, in flight, asked why Peng helped our hero. The man stood up and said that the main character was right. And as soon as a centimeter of distance remained between the men, the leader of the Yi family stopped their fight. He asked the men if they were not ashamed of it because they were in the same family and fought against each other. The leader approached our hero and asked him if his meridians had already converged. The guy said everything was fine. At this news, the leader patted the boy on the shoulder and happily told him to never give up in the future. Yuan saw this, he was indignant and displeased and said that this guy ruined the soul of his son. And after that, he offered to expel our hero from the family. Qin just laughed, he said that that boy was not that good compared to him. He said that he destroyed his morale out of a sense of self-preservation. And suddenly, the main character thought of something. He confidently raised his hand up and said that if his fighting spirit was stronger than the boy's spirit, then this incident could go unpunished. From these words, the boy's father laughed. He could not believe that our hero would have a stronger fighting spirit for his son. As Qin approached the tablet, Yuan shouted at him from behind that if someone from the Yi family could not awaken their fighting spirit, they would be expelled from the family. Qin turned around before striking and looked at his uncle and sister. They supported him and believed that he would succeed in everything. Wu Hai approached the guy and hurried him on, telling him to start. Charging his fist with aura, Qin struck the tablet with all his might. During the impact, the protagonist remembered that in a past life he awakened the soul of a purple-green dragon. After the impact, there was silence, like the tablet, and the people did not make a sound. During this silence, Yan laughed out loud. Laughing, the man said that he was right and that our hero will never become stronger for his son Tin. The boy's father began to scoff at the guy. He expressed a lot of bad words in the direction of our hero. Behind Yan stood the leader. He said his name in frustration. Suddenly, the tablet made a strange vibration and ringing. Everyone around turned around and saw how a huge golden building appeared near the statue. It was a copper tower. Looking from below, Qin was not very pleased with his fighting spirit. He expected more. Behind, the guy was supported by Uncle Pang. He was very pleased with the result of our hero. What cannot be said about the boy's father, he said with anger and a cry that he would destroy our hero. Qin, without fear, repeated the terms of the deal to the elder so that he would hear and confirm everything. The man could no longer stand still. He wanted to quickly deal with this. He even reached out to the elder to resolve the issue, but the elder only asked him to calm down. Crossing the border, the elder took the man by the hand and asked if he did not respect him as an elder. He reminded him that the green class was very important to their family. The leader intervened in their conversation. He also asked his son to calm down and take Tian to the pharmacy. Yan was shocked by his father's words. Later, our hero and his sister returned back. Along the way, the girl kept praising her brother for his strength and ability. The guys came to the Yi family hall, and when they were about to go up the stairs, they saw two men discussing our hero. Rumors about his strength and about the situation that happened during the awakening spread very quickly. When Qin was talking to one guy, he suddenly smelled a familiar smell. It was the essence of his past life. In a past life, Qin practiced a sacred martial art called blood magic armor. With the heart of 10 demons as the base, 6 levels became available. 50 to 500 could be collected to become the golden spirit blood armor. Last time, our hero reached the 6th level, and 3 drops of his essence turned into a bloody devil armor. This armor could withstand the impact of dragons and stop the thunder of heaven. Climbing the steps to the temple, the guy was met by a guard on the way. He bowed and told Qin that no one is allowed in here without the order of their leader. Hearing this, Qin thought about it, and after a few seconds, he turned around and asked where the lion statue had gone. Looking at the empty space, the guard said that a few years ago, this stone lion suddenly came to life and became extremely powerful. He was fierce and destroyed many of the disciples of the Yi family. Later, the patriarch stopped him. Hearing this, the boy thought. After only a second, he guessed that this lion could absorb the essence of his past life and thus come to life. After some thought, Qin asked the guard where the lion was now. He said with an innocent face that he did not know. And after that, he gave a hint to him to look for the statue. He said that when the lion's strength weakened, the head of the family put it in the Yi family's shop. Right after these words, Qin asked the guard to show him the way to that shop. At the same moment, a customer appeared at Uncle Lee's stall. It was Mr. Hai. Mr. Hai, without considering the rest of the goods, immediately pointed his finger at the cage with the lion. He said that he would take it. Holding a fan in his hands and with a smile on his face, he said that he would take the lion for free. Hai really liked the words of the master, and at the same moment, he gestured to his servants to take the lion away. Suddenly, Qin burst into the stall. Even from the threshold he shouted to the men that this lion was not for sale. These words angered the seller, and he immediately turned around and asked who dared to say that. Qin said in a calm voice that it was him. Hai turning around with his master, he saw our hero and greeted him with a smile on his face. And then, he asked the guy how his future daughter-in-law was doing. Right after that, Mr. Hai removed his smile and turning back to his servants, he asked them what they were doing. Mr. Hai did not hear an answer from his servants because Qin immediately interrupted him and said that this lion was not for sale. Hearing these words, the owner of the stall stood in front of Mr. Hai and immediately hinted that our hero immediately apologized to him. Indignant, Kin approached the master and standing in front of him, he began to communicate with Mr. Hai about his words, where he called Zoya his future daughter-in-law. This very infuriated the seller, he already angrily began to shout and call our hero names, poking his finger at him. Kin, hearing the insult in his direction, immediately changed his face and after a second, he asked the seller about his words. And without waiting for an answer, the main character hit the old man in the face. After the blow, the seller turned around and insulted our hero once again. And after a few seconds, he turned around and began to shout and speak out in the direction of the guy. Kin, tired of listening to all this, once again hit the arrogant old man so that he finally fell silent. And placing his hand on the trembling face of the seller, Kin asked him what he had said about him. The second time, not having learned the lesson, the seller once again called our hero. For this, he received even more what he deserved. The blow was not weak, because of him, the seller flew out several teeth and bruises also appeared. From the outside, Mr. Hai watched all this, he was not afraid of our hero, but, on the contrary, admired it. Finally, having learned his lesson, the seller began to say that Kin was his master. And he, in turn, was a vile person. When Mr. Hai saw that it was possible to intervene in the conversation of men, he immediately approached them and told Kin that he was amazed that the guy was able to restore his meridians. After these words, he ordered his servants to quickly pick up the lion. Kin, having dealt with the villain, immediately approached Hai with an evil face. He asked if he did not understand human language. The servants, having heard the impudent treatment of their master, immediately abandoned all their affairs and trying to draw their blades, they rushed into battle against Kin. Kin prevented their attempt to attack because at the moment when one of the servants tried to get the sword, Kin put his hand so that he could not do it. Right after that, our hero sent the man flying. This was seen by the second servant, with fury in his eyes, just like the first one, he began to attack Kin. A few seconds later, our hero destroyed two of Mr. Hai's servants. The man did not like the actions of our hero very much, he threatened Kin with a furious face for what he had done. And in a moment, Mr. Hai activated his abilities and stood up. Trying to hit our hero, Kin delivered a counter blow, and thus their fists filled with magical power met each other. From the force of our hero's blow, Mr. Hai was thrown back. Ignoring this, Kin asked Ru what was going on here. When Ro was trying to say a word, Mr. Hai interrupted her with his laughter. His face was terrifying, and with that expression, he asked our hero if he really didn't know anything. Looking directly into Kin's eyes, Mr. Hai said that for the sake of the guy, Ro went to Hai's older brother. Ro, listening to the words of Mr. Hai, began to cry and say that it was all not true. Mr. Hai began to laugh even more, he said that the girl should have slept with his brother so that there would be no problems with the medicine in the future. Hearing all this, our hero became very angry, he asked Mr. Hai to immediately shut his mouth. But he did not listen to him, the man only taunted Ro and asked her if she had made a decision. Not having to endure and wait, Kin activated his abilities and began to attack the impudent man. And after only a second, he hit Hai in the stomach. From such a blow, the man lost consciousness, and our hero, standing near the man's ear, told him that he would make him remember this moment once and for all. At the same moment, Mr. Hai felt how the main character began to destroy his meridians. Invisible and transparent threads inside the man began to tear one after another, like a falling domino. Horror and disappointment appeared on his face, and he felt unbearable pain. The wounded servant woke up, and when he got up, the first thing he saw was how his master was suffering from unbearable pain. Kin did not look at all this, he turned around and told the others to get out of here. When the guy approached Ro, he put his hand on her shoulder and told her to never do that again. And right after that, he ordered the lion's cage to be opened. As soon as the cage was opened, Kin felt that there were only 45 drops of blood essence in the stone lion's body. The lion obediently approached our hero and, looking at him with a sad look, sat down beside him. Seeing this, Kin asked the statue where his right eye was. Hearing this, the statue roared as if it was saying something to our hero. Kin understood everything, he grabbed Ro with him, jumped on a stone statue of a lion. Sitting on it, he asked the lion to take him to his right eye. After these words, the lion jerked off and breaking through the wall, he jumped out into the street. After some time, the stone lion led the guys into the forest of death. Thick and green trees surrounded the guys, creating a feeling of the unknown. Going deep into the forest, Kin saw the memories of the past owner of his body. As it turns out, that guy was kidnapped here by the enemy, and later they crippled him. Going even further, Kin saw a knife sticking out of a tree. Looking at the curved tree, the guy again saw the memory of being hung and thrown here. Looking and remembering all this, Kin promised to avenge himself. Leaving all thoughts behind, the guys continued on their way forward. Suddenly, our hero saw something that made him surprised. Before them appeared a huge and long serpent. His eyes were fearful and his teeth were filled with terror. Our hero looked at him and was only surprised at what this snake was doing here. And then, Kin's thoughts were interrupted by Ro. She told her brother to look ahead. Turning around, Kin saw how the stranger with black began to fight with the snake. The man soaked his spear with spiritual energy, and a second later, he thrust it into the back of the terrible snake. During the process, the man realized that something had gone wrong. And at that moment he was simply thrown back. The serpent immediately pounced on the unknown. And then, out of nowhere, a large paw of the dragon appeared. It was the fighting spirit of our hero. He saved an unknown man from his doom. While suffocating the monster, Kin examined its eyes. He noticed that it had 3 eyes, and the third eye was the one that the lion had lost. An unknown man was able to successfully land on a rock and stand on his spear. Standing on his weapon, he used one of his techniques again. And a second later, the man retaliated against the giant snake. But as it turned out, instead of a snake, a man wanted to destroy our hero. And thanks to his skills, Kin was able to jump back in time and dodge the man's blow. Standing with his back to the guy, the man took off his mask and said that along with the body of the snake, he would take the body of the main character. Hearing this, Kin's face changed. He asked in surprise whether the stranger knew him. Hiding his spear, Ming said that our hero's head was worth 10,000 low-grade spiritual stones, and that's why he wanted to destroy Kin. Hearing this, Rose stood up for her brother. She said that if not for Kin, he would have been destroyed by the serpent. After a few seconds of talking, another guy named Liu Tai popped out of nowhere. As soon as he raised his head, he saw that his comrade had found Kin. Kin was very much needed by Liu Tai. Our hero watched the empty conversation of 2 unknown people. Continuing to listen to them, he got tired of it and asked them when they would calm down. The man in black did not like the fact that Kin began to interrupt them so brazenly. And out of anger, he called our hero a jerk. For this, Ming received a strong blow to the stomach. Feeling this pain, Ming could not believe that he was hit by Kin because all the time he considered him a weakling. Liu Tai, seeing that something was happening here, immediately began to run away from here with his tail between his legs. Our hero saw this, he instantly turned his head and ordered the guy to stand still. Tai approached Kin and on his knees begged him for mercy, saying that he was just joking and was careless. Kin ignored all these words. He told the guy to give him the bag that hung on his belt. Without hesitation, Tai took and gave the bag to our hero. As soon as the bag fell into the hands of our hero, Tai's face changed. He looked offended at the beaten Ming and said that it was all because of him. Tai's next move was as unexpected as the last. He stood over his comrade, pointed his finger at him, and said that he also had a magic bag that he hid in his trousers. After that, Tai bowed and with an innocent face asked to leave. Having received permission, Tai immediately rushed and ran into the depths of the forest. When our hero was hiding the bag in his pocket, Ro called him. Kin paid no attention to this, and hiding his sack, he reached for Ming's sack. As soon as he grabbed it, Ming, lying on the ground, squeezed his hand so as not to give the bag away. This alerted our hero, and he pulled the bag even harder and was able to pick it up. Running away, Tai could not calm down. Turning around, he shouted nasty things about our hero, as well as about his family. Continuing to run, he took out and checked his real bag, which contained real fire seeds. Kin suspected something was wrong, and a few seconds later he caught up with Tai and, blocking his path, ordered the seeds to be given to him. Making a formidable appearance, Kin warned Tai, saying that if he did not give him the seeds now, he would take them by force, despite the sacrifices. Tai realized that he could not cope with our hero, so he voluntarily handed over the stone and went to cry near the tree. Kin, examining the stone, was convinced that it was real. Upon his return, he received congratulations not only from Ro, but also from Ming. Ignoring the man, Kin and her sister shared the magic bags among themselves. When Ming heard what they were going to do, he was immediately horrified, and staying behind he asked Kin if he would not give him his bag under the agreement. Our hero, with a formidable expression, turned around and said that it would be enough for Ming that he saved his life. Turning back to Ru, Kin told his sister with a smile on his face that they were about to go retrieve the stone lion's right eye that was still in the snake. When our hero returned the eye to the lion, exactly 50 drops of blood became in his body. In his family's courtyard, Kin stood in front of the lion and sucked his blood back. When the last drops of blood had already left the lion's body, his mind was still with him. Qin told Ru that the lion had no strength left, but he still had spirit. After these words, the hero suggested that Ro take the lion for himself. To which the girl agreed without hesitation. And after a few seconds, the lion and Ro became friends and had fun together. Qin was happy for his sister, but now was not the time to relax. He went to his room to completely absorb his past blood. Entering the room, he immediately began to conjure. Having calmed down, he sat down on the bed and taking a special position, the guy began meditation in which he will absorb and canalize the blood. A few seconds later, in the vicinity of a small village, a noise was heard. It was Qin. He activated a special technique. He began to absorb all the drops of blood. After some time, our hero finished the whole process. There were dark spots where he sat. They looked like dinosaur footprints. In order to somehow relax, Qin decides to go outside. Going out into the courtyard, he heard a strange noise coming from the arena of his family. Somewhere in Doomsday City, in the Yeo family arena, many people had gathered. Qin, unable to resist, went to see what was happening there. Along the way, he took Ro with him. Having come to the source of the noise, people have already begun to recognize our hero. When he approached the arena, all the people made a passage for him, going to the side. Some still remembered Xiao Tian's incident. They made fun of the boy and said all sorts of nasty things. Approaching right up to the arena, Qin immediately heard threats in his direction. It turned out that in this arena, someone was already waiting for our hero. It was Yi Tian, the older brother of the boy whose morale had been destroyed by the protagonist. He shouted the name of our hero with fury in his eyes. Xiao Tian heard this, he immediately ran and clung to his brother, like a small puppy to his mother. This name scared the boy very much. Looking at his younger brother, Yi Tian became more and more angry at our hero because his younger brother was never afraid of anyone, and then a person appeared who ruined his life. Blazing with rage, Yi Tian insultingly said that he would not only destroy our hero, but also destroy his meridians. Qin didn't like Yi Tian's way of speaking, he repeated one of Yi Tian's words with displeasure. Yi Tian heard this and started laughing out loud and saying that it was all true. Then he noticeably began to go too far when talking about his mother. This was heard by the head of the family. He intervened in the conversation and ordered his grandson to stop. Qin, having caught a good moment, did not let it go so easily. When the guy turned away, our hero stabbed him in the jaw for his words. Such actions angered Yi Tian even more. He waved his fists and did not understand how Qin dared to hit him. As soon as the guy came to his senses, he saw that our hero was already standing in the arena and offered him to arrange a duel. Full of emotions, Yi Tian agrees to fight our hero. The guy climbed into the arena under the discussion of other observers. They already knew that Yi Tian would lose because he had already received a slap from Qin before the fight began. These rumors pissed him off even more. Some of the observers began to worry about our hero. They knew that Qin was not completely cured and therefore, for someone, this duel could be the last. Meanwhile, there was a conversation between the guys in the arena. Yi Tian pointed his finger at Qin and threatened him, saying that he would now be destroyed. Our hero was not at all afraid of the words of his opponent, he answered him as if mocking him. Suddenly, Yi Tian turned his head back with a strange smirk. Following him, Qin saw Xiao Tian's father standing behind him. A man from afar shouted to his son not to hold back his strength. Our hero, looking at the father of his opponent with a calm face, told him that today he will have another useless son. These words made the man angry. If there was an opportunity, he himself would have fought with our hero. Yi Tian saw this and shouted to his father to calm down and not worry about him, because if Qin hit him, he would cease to be human. These words made the main character laugh. He quietly said that Yi Tian was not human anyway. These words were the last straw for Yan. He even more angry called our hero and asked him to repeat his words. Qin did so without retreating, he repeated everything again and then asked him why the man sent someone who could destroy our hero. The protagonist remembered how on the way back, Ming told him that Yan offered 10,000 stones for his head. The head of the family, having heard the name of his son, immediately approached him and, holding his hand near his neck, asked if it was all true. Yan, like a little boy, began to make excuses and say that Qin was lying to him. Our hero, hearing this, began to laugh. From the sidelines, Yi Tian watched, he was already furious with everything that was happening. And having caught the right moment, he clenched his fist and began to attack the main character. Qin was able to dodge such a blow from Yi Tian with a reaction. As the boys' fists collided, they were suddenly surrounded by several electrical lightning bolts. The head watching from the side was very surprised that Qin was able to reach the 4th level of spiritual power in a very short period of time. At that moment, Yi Yan, sensing danger, immediately jumped back. All the observers as well as the head were surprised by this outcome of the battle. Standing 4 meters away from the protagonist, Yi Yan looked at his hand and couldn't believe what was happening. After a few seconds, the guy raised his head and asked our hero if he was also at the 7th level. Exhaling, Qin said that he did not have it. But in fact, in this fight, more combat experience than the level of the guys decided. After all, thanks to past combat experience, the main character was able to fight a man whose combat level was twice his. Yi Yan was at a loss as to how Qin could fight with him on level ground. But now, it didn't matter to him. Yi Yan activated his powers and decided to finish off Qin with just one blow. A second later, Yi Yan charged into battle. Before our hero appeared the image of a large bear paw. And if you do not dodge it, then things will be bad. Qin was not afraid of this attack at all. He activated his powers with a giggle. And at the same moment, our hero began to repulse the annoying enemy. From the outside, it was clear that the main character's fighting spirit was several times larger and stronger than Yi Yan's fighting spirit. Yi Yan, realizing that the situation was not in his hands, was very surprised. And in a second, he was flying towards the steps of the arena. Everyone around was amazed that the main character was able to defeat an opponent several times his level. To further anger his opponent, Qin specifically criticized his punch. As he continued to watch his opponent, Qin realized that the jokes were over as Yi Yan took out some kind of pill. Without thinking twice, Yi Yan took a magic pill. And suddenly, his face changed and the fighting spirit became stronger several times. Looking closely at the pill, our hero realized what it was. With the help of it, a person could gain strength, but the price was blood, as well as a small withdrawal of potential. Yi Yan could no longer control himself. Without waiting for the right moment, he attacked Qin with the words that he would destroy him. The protagonist was not nearly afraid of this monster. He took a stance and began to activate his abilities. Yi Yan was already a few centimeters away from Qin. To repel this terrible attack, the protagonist decides to activate the magical bloody armor. And after that, a bear in armor appeared behind Qin, and behind him was a large snake. And so, the opponents stretched out their hands for a clash. The mighty fighting spirits of the rivals clashed. And a second later, the fight was over. Yi Yan flew to the side in bewilderment. He and his fighting spirit were defeated. Everyone around was amazed that Qin was able to defeat Yi Yan. After all, in the past, Yi Yan and Qin also fought, but this time the fight was completely different. People also didn't understand how the main character was able to gain such power so quickly. The second elder of the family was no less surprised. After waking up, Yi Yan looked at his hands and thought that all this was impossible. Indeed, recently, Qin's meridians were torn, and then he was able to fight back. Our hero called the guy to pay attention to him. As soon as Yi Yan raised his head, he saw something terrifying in front of him. Our hero was going to destroy the guy's meridians for what he said. By clenching his fist, Qin was able to completely deprive Yi Yan of his meridians and strength with just a single movement of his hand. A second later, Yi Yan was writhing in unbearable pain. He screamed, but no one could help him. And after a while, Yi Yan collapsed near his younger brother. The father, looking at all this, was furious. Out of anger, he began to say a lot of unnecessary things. Our hero decided to say something in response, but his words added fuel to the fire. The father of 2 weak sons immediately said that Qin would be finished. Yan activated his abilities and tried to hit our hero. As soon as there was a second left before the impact, the man's fist was stopped by the second elder. He told Yan to accept defeat and realize that his children were useless against our hero. Suddenly, Yan called out to Yi Yan. The father ran up to his son, and he said that after some time, he would repay Qin, but already 100 times more. At the same time, the second elder was delighted with our hero. He promised to tell the others about Qin's skills so that they would give advice on what to do next. The head of the family approached Qin. He thanked our hero for the experience he gave him. Uncle Pang also did not stand aside. He congratulated our hero and said that soon he would receive valuable advice that could change his life. Qin was not interested because he is the god of war. Suddenly, the clan chief ordered everyone to be quiet. It turned out that the main character, without knowing it, took first place in the family tournament. The second elder brought out the prize. Our hero's trophy was a thunder fruit. Around the watching people were simply delighted with such a reward. They all really wanted to get this fruit because it helped them more than Qin. The main character, holding the mysterious fruit in his hands, was very happy about it. After all, with his help, he is the spiritual force of the world. Kin's thoughts were interrupted by the head of the clan. He asked our hero to follow him to tell something. Some time later, the old man and the boy come to the family temple. Standing in the temple, the old man begins the story of the Yeo family. When our hero entered the temple, his blood began to boil. He was fully convinced that this temple contained the essence of his blood. Suddenly, the old man pointed his finger at the spiritual tables. And then he began his story about a certain Yi Zhong. He was once the head of the Yeo family, with a green class fighting spirit. But then, something terrible happened. One power did not like the actions of the former head, and therefore they plotted against him. After hearing only part of the story, Qin guessed that, in a past life, when he exploded and spilled 3,000 blood essences, ancestor Yeo was lucky enough to absorb some of it. And if not for the blood of our hero, that man could not have achieved such success. After finishing his story, the old man began to shake the main character and tell him how important it was how he worked. And in the course of everything, the clan chief said that he strongly wants to return the family to its former glory, as well as destroy the Shangyun family. The name of this family surprised our hero very much. He was not afraid to ask about it. And then the old man again told him that when his ancestor fought with the bloody Lord Zun for 7 days and 7 nights, upon arrival he found out what? In a family of about 100 people, only a dozen survived. Further, the old man, relying on old age, says that he will not have time to return the family to its former status. And so he says that he sees in our hero the potential that no one else has. When the old man left, he said that today he would give Qin the most valuable fortune of his family. Pointing his palm towards the floor, the old man began to use a special technique. A few seconds later, the main character saw something that made his face horrified. It turned out that with the help of the seal, the sword of our hero was well hidden. And then grandfather was able to get it and show it to Qin. When the head took out their family's landmark, he immediately started talking about the sword. The old man said that this blade was dangerous and cruel, and therefore it was sealed in this way. Suddenly, the sword trembled very strangely. The head saw this and realized that now the sword would fly towards the main character, and therefore he shouted to the guy to dodge it. A second later, the clan leader stood like a statue. He couldn't believe what was happening before his eyes. As it turned out, Qin pulled the sword towards him with his power. He immediately learned that it was his own sword, with which he had been in more than one battle. The protagonist's sword was forged from infernal steel. It was made by the first master of the lower realms. And after 300 days, he was ready. After a while, the head came to his senses, and then laughing, he said that this sword could never choose anyone, and then from the first touch, he chose Qin. After all this, the old man went to pray for his ancestor. After reading a prayer, he put out the candles. At some point, the sword of our hero lit up. A few seconds later, Qin was enveloped in bright yellow flames. As soon as the protagonist blinked, the sword moved him high into the heavens. In the clouds, Qin saw a man with his sword. The guy suggested that it could be the remnant of Yi Jun's soul. At this time, the soul of a man fought with someone. Holding the sword of the protagonist in his hands, the man swung and tried to hit the deity. This strike was useless, and his opponent dodged it with ease. At a loss, Zhong's soul made this sword several dozen times larger with the help of spiritual power. And already with the help of this sword, he was able to defeat the deity. When the warrior calmed down and removed his power, he looked at our hero with a penetrating look. And then he went to him. Kneeling before Qin, he handed the piece of sword to our hero. Qin told the soul that he would avenge him and punish everyone who had hurt him. When our hero took the sword in his hands, Zhong's soul scattered into the air and disappeared forever. In one house, there was a very serious conversation. Yan was incredibly angry at the protagonist for what he did to his sons. Yi Tian was sitting on a chair thinking about passing away because since his meridians were destroyed, he could no longer train. Desperate, the guy decides to try taking a blood devil pill. The father, seeing the actions of his son, immediately ordered him to stop. After all, in addition to restorative effects, it could also cause great harm to the body. Xiao Tian looked at his brother and said such a speech, from which Yi Tian decided to take a pill without hesitation. Yi Tian, not realizing the consequences, took the magic pill. From this, the father was horrified. He still did not quite understand what had just happened. Yi Tian touched his brother and said that he would destroy our hero as soon as the pill took effect. Until some time, Yi Tian had to find and absorb the blood. And therefore, Yan, realizing the whole situation, said that someone else from the sect would help him to commit revenge. The guy liked all this very much, he was already eager to take revenge. Deep in the night, Kin, in his house, sat and talked with a sword. He thanked an old friend for past adventures and said that he was glad to meet him again. And suddenly, during the conversation, lightning struck and a thunderstorm began. The protagonist, looking out the window, was convinced of this, and after a few seconds he realized that this weather was perfect for thunderfruit training. After a while, Kin ran across the slippery rooftops of the village where he lived. His passing shadow, someone saw. The man under the umbrella thought that our hero was running to his beloved. The man also knew that some warriors harden their body with the power of thunder. And then, he assumed that Kin was going to do just that. Near the servant, there was also another man named Hay. Mr. Hai was sure that no one in the city could do it. The servants supported their master, they laughingly said that no one in the city could be stronger for him. At this moment, our hero ran over the men. Mr. Hai looked up and saw Kin. The servants also saw him and shouted after him that the guy would not succeed and he could only dream of such a thing. But, when the protagonist jumping off the roof, he left behind a large crater, Mr. Hai became very interested in him and ordered his servants to follow him. After some time, our hero was already running through a dark and mysterious forest. Having reached the cliff, he caught the right moment to harden his body. Taking out a magic fruit, the guy sent it to the sky so that the lightning could hit him. As soon as some lightning struck the fruit, Kin began to eat it without hesitation. The servants and Mr. Hai watched from behind. The men were very surprised by what they had just seen. They thought that our hero was going to self-destruction because they did not understand his strength. Mr. Hai ordered his subjects to be silent and continue to watch. The body of our hero was partially covered with lightning. And at that moment, Kin was hit by a powerful jolt of electricity. Such a flash lit up everything around. The servants were shocked, one of them accidentally said something superfluous, and for this he received a very strong blow to the face. Suddenly, the clouds began to dissipate. Kin at this moment held a large electric sphere above his head, which was several times larger than him. During Kin's training, more people came to him who were going to take revenge on our hero. Having completed preparations for the final spell, Kin clenched his fist and said the final word that could activate new abilities. But nothing happened because Mr. Hai was very jealous of our hero, and so that Kin did not rise a step higher, Mr. Hai decided to break his concentration with a sudden attack. Kin was very surprised when he saw someone here. From the sudden blow, Kin was unable to dodge. Mr. Hai's fist was faster for his reaction. But fortunately, our hero was experienced and therefore he managed to block. Mr. Hai immediately recognized Kin. He laughingly said that the guy was in an awkward position because his breakthrough was interrupted. Immediately after that, Mr. Hai asked our hero to give him the treasure. Kin ignored the request, instead calling the man shameless. Such a word offended the man very much, and after that, he would not allow the guy to leave so easily. Taking stock, Mr. Hai launched an attack. Our hero, jumping into the air, blocked the fist of his opponent with his fist. Because of this, two strong sides clashed. A second after the collision, it was possible to determine the winner because Mr. Hai was thrown back and blood came from his mouth. Those watching the fight were surprised that Mr. Hai could be injured so badly. Ignoring the criticism, the man began to tell Kin that he fought dishonestly because he was still using weapons. Hearing this, everyone around began to support their master. They shouted in unison that Mr. Hai was right and Kin was a liar. Calling our hero, Mr. Hai said that Kin was a coward because he could not fight honestly. Kin, without waiting for anything, launched a retaliatory attack on his opponent. Jumping up to the level of the man's head, he tried to hit him. Mr. Hai, seeing Kin's intentions, immediately activated his abilities to avoid getting hit. With a shout and motivation, the men began their fight. At this time, a crowd of onlookers supported Mr. Hai. At this time, Ming sneaked up to them unnoticed. As soon as they saw him, Ming, not at a loss, laid out a special betting board on the ground. Kin was written on one side and Mr. Hai on the other. One of the onlookers was at a loss that Ming could bet at such a moment. This same man, after scolding Ming, made his bet on Mr. Hai. He was fully confident in his victory. Following him, the others joined, who made their bets on Mr. Hai. As a result, absolutely everything was put on their master. Seeing all this, Ming sighed heavily and placed a large silver ingot as a bet on Kin. At the same time, Mr. Hai was alarmed that his opponent had disappeared somewhere. As it turned out, Kin was behind him, and using a blade strike, our hero hit his opponent in the face so that he lost consciousness. Those watching around were shocked by this outcome of the fight. They all looked at the pleased Ming at the same time and heard him say that no more bets were accepted. The crowd, seeing that their master was losing, immediately began to cheer him on. But despite all this, Mr. Hai was still weaker than Qin. Every time he got what he deserved. Once again, our hero launched a man into a stone. Moving away from him, Mr. Hai began to spit blood. Qin noticed something happened behind him. After listening, he learned that everyone who bet on Mr. Hai was very angry with his servant. When the man came to his senses, he decided to end our hero once and for all. A few seconds later, he activated his fighting spirit. Seeing this, the desire to support their master was awakened in the crowd again, despite the injuries received. The main character also decided to end this fight quickly. Assuming a stance, he summoned the dragon's claw. And with the help of it, he easily defeated his opponent with just one blow. As a result, the great fighter was defeated and humiliated. Absolutely all the observers turned to stone from this outcome of the battle. For some time they could not come to their senses. Mr. Hai accepted defeat and with tears in his eyes, resigned himself to the fact that he was a loser. After the battle was over, our hero approached the crowd and asked them to give him all their money since they saw everything. Without thinking twice, the whole crowd at one moment pointed a finger at Ming, who tried to hide unnoticed with the money. Qin was not surprised and after a few seconds, he took his money from Ming.